Hello and welcome to this edition of World at War. I'm your host, Mohammed Saleh. Uneasy lies the head that wears the crown, says the proverb. In Pakistan, the person who wears the crown is not gripped by a sense of unease, but mortal dread. Pakistan's leaders get assassinated and no one ever finds out the truth. On the 3rd of November, Pakistan's charismatic former cricket captain and the controversial Prime Minister Imran Khan was almost killed. The assassin's bullets hit his legs. Imran Khan survived. But will the mystery of the assassin's motives ever be resolved?
The ploy was to have me bumped off in the name of a religious fanatic that he's, just like Salman Taseer was killed. So this was the ploy, and I disclosed this on 24th of September. These three guys, we want their resignation because there can be no investigation if the Prime Minister, the Interior Minister, and this ISI guy, Faisal, Major General Faisal, if these three are involved, there can be no independent investigation.
The person who's been arrested claims that he wanted to kill Imran Khan because he was misleading the public. He's also further claimed that on the one side, Azan, the call for the Islamic prayer, was on, while on the other, Imran Khan was making noise on the deck. But can this ever be the full truth? In Pakistan's murky politics, who can ever be sure? From the moment Pakistan emerged as an independent nation, some of the most popular and charismatic leaders of Pakistan have been shot, hanged, or killed in suicide bombings. Pakistan's first Prime Minister, Liaquat Ali Khan, was killed after he was shot twice in the chest while he was on stage during a public meeting of the Muslim League at the Company Bagh in Rawalpindi. The assassin was immediately shot dead. The exact motive behind the assassination of Liaquat Ali Khan has never been fully established. On his death, Liaquat Ali Khan has been given the title of Shaheed-e-Millat, which means the martyr of the nation. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who was dubbed as the Quaid-e-Awam, or the people's leader, was an extremely charismatic leader of Pakistan. He was ousted from the top job on the 5th of July in 1977 when General Zia-ul-Haq staged a coup. He was later charged, tried and declared guilty of authorizing the murder of a political opponent. And on the 4th of April 1979, he was hanged until death at the central jail in Rawalpindi. Many in Pakistan consider the execution of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto as an act of judicial murder that was ordered by General Zia-ul-Haq. But General Zia-ul-Haq would also meet an unfortunate end. 9 years later, on the 17th of August in 1988, Zia-ul-Haq died in a mysterious plane crash after his plane took off from the Bahawalpur airport. 31 other people, apart from General Zia, died in the crash, including the Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee General Akhtar Abdur Rahman, several close aides of Zia, and even the then American ambassador to Pakistan, Arnold Lewis. There are many within Pakistan who say that General Zia's plane crash was actually an act of planned murder. Ghulam Murtaza Bhutto, the son of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto and the younger brother of Benazir Bhutto, is often blamed for orchestrating the plane crash, but nothing has ever been proven. Benazir Bhutto, who had been the Prime Minister of Pakistan twice and had returned back to the country after an 8-year-long self-imposed exile to run for the top job in Pakistan for a third time, was assassinated on the 27th of December in 2007. Shots were fired at her at a political rally and a suicide bomb was detonated immediately afterwards. The venue of this gruesome assassination was again Liaquat Bagh, the very place where Pakistan's first Prime Minister, Liaquat Ali Khan, had been assassinated. The Pakistani Taliban has been blamed for the killing of Benazir Bhutto. Her killing led to widespread chaos and plunged Pakistan into civil unrest. But almost a decade later, General Musharraf, in an interview, admitted that those in the administration at the time may have been involved in the killing of Benazir Bhutto. For those who've been following this tempestuous and unsettling political history of Pakistan, this attempt on Imran Khan's life does not come as a surprise. The indicators that the Russia-Ukraine war will spill out of the frontiers of Ukraine are now staring us in the face. In a serious allegation, Moscow has now accused Britain of being involved in the planning and execution of blasts that resulted in the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipelines. But the accusations don't end here. Britain has also been blamed for the drone attacks on Sevastopol. And amidst these accusations, the United States of America is doing something very interesting. It is now upgrading the nuclear weapons that it has deployed across various NATO bases in Europe. So what really is Washington's strategy? And how have the people in Ukraine been living their life amidst this relentless bloodletting? Our next report gets you the details.
The Russian Black Sea headquarters of Sevastopol was attacked with unmanned surface drones, exposing the vulnerability of Russia's Black Sea fleet. Small kayak-shaped boats fitted with tracking devices, jet ski motors and cameras carried out the audacious sea attack. Russia initially claimed all attacking sea drones were repelled, but later admitted some damage to its Black Sea fleet. But on the basis of the images that have since surfaced, open-source investigators insist that Russia's new flagship of the Black Sea, Admiral Makarov, has suffered some serious damage and possibly has been disabled. Russia promptly blamed British specialists of being involved in planning and executing the attack and summoned the British ambassador.
These actions by Kyiv were carried out under the guidance of British specialists, which was announced by the Russian Defense Ministry. Russia informed the international community about it during a session of the United Nations Security Council. In this regard, the British ambassador will shortly be summoned to the Russian Foreign Ministry.
But Russia has made one more sensational claim. It has squarely accused the British Navy's direct involvement in the blowing up of the Nord Stream gas pipelines. Moscow has cited the phone hack of Liz Truss, in which she messaged Anthony Blinken, saying it's done, just moments after the sabotage, as evidence of British involvement. The British Defence Ministry declined to immediately comment on the allegation. The war has now clearly spilled outside the borders of Ukraine. The other troubling factor, which Kiev has been jolted with, is the blackout of the 1,300 Starlink communications satellites over funding issues. These satellites have proven to be a game changer on the battlefield for the Ukrainians in tracking Russian targets. Without them, Kiev's counteroffensive will immediately lose its edge. But the cost of using them is said to be in the tens of millions of dollars on a monthly basis.
Starlinks have worked, are working, and will definitely work in Ukraine. Elon Musk publicly spoke about this, and we had a conversation with him about it. So we do not see a problem in this regard.
From striking the hard military targets, the war has steadily shifted course. And increasingly, it is the civilian infrastructure that has been targeted to make life harder for the common people. Through its incessant missile and drone strikes, Russia has knocked out almost 40% of Ukraine's power generation capacity. An estimated 4.5 million people across the war-torn nation are said to be without power. To brace itself for the coming bitter winter, Kiev is preparing to install 1,000 heating points. In the Russian-controlled city of Novokakhovka, residents live in mortal fear of artillery shelling that has been repeatedly aimed at the Kakhovka hydroelectric dam.
They have never stopped shelling the city of Nova Kakhovka in Kherson region. They shell the city every night. Daytime shelling has, over the past week, been. But at night, Ukrainians let us know they are there constantly. The principal target of the shelling is the Kakhovka hydropower plant.
If the dam breaks, more than half the city in the Kherson region will be flooded, and thousands of homes will be submerged. Survival on the battlefield is tough, and it is the common Ukrainian people who are paying the ultimate price.
The Korean Peninsula is hurtling towards a crisis after having fired 23 ballistic missiles, which is the highest in a span of a day. North Korea is reported to have flown as many as about 180 of its warplanes close to the airspace of South Korea. But the question, of course, is this: how far up the escalation ladder is North Korea willing to climb up to get the attention of Washington? Because after all, what we are witnessing on the Korean Peninsula today is essentially a dangerous game of messaging with missiles.
80 fighter jets, including an unspecified number of F-35A stealth warplanes, were scrambled by Seoul. This after North Korea on Friday reportedly flew a total of 180 of its warplanes for almost 4 hours near the South Korean airspace. For the whole of this week, the Korean Peninsula has been on razor's edge, with the United States and South Korea conducting joint military drills called Vigilant Storm, involving hundreds of aircraft and thousands of military personnel from both countries. On Thursday, sirens went off in Japan and people were asked to take shelter when initial assessments indicated that a missile might fly over the central and northern part of the Japanese archipelago.
We detected that the missile that was launched around 7:40 am local time might fly over Japan, so we put out a J alert. But later we have confirmed that the missile did not fly over Japan and disappeared in the skies above the Sea of Japan. So we would like to rectify our announcement.
On the 2nd of November, South Korea hit back at Pyongyang's barrage of ballistic missile tests by firing 3 air-to-surface missiles towards its maritime border with the north. Since the 25th of September, Pyongyang, in a game of competitive muscle flexing, has fired ballistic missiles from at least 6 different locations. Military analysts have pointed out that North Korean missile launches are getting more complex, undetectable, and therefore even more threatening.
As far as I know, it is the first time. Many call it SLBM. But it's not a submarine-launched missile because it's not launched from a submarine. I'd like to say that North Korea has developed a new missile dubbed ULBM, which means Underwater Launched Ballistic Missile.
In September, North Korea passed a new law giving itself the right to carry out a preemptive strike. Besides insisting that its nuclear status is irreversible and that there is no further question of any talks or negotiations over denuclearization. And this is not just empty rhetoric. On the 10th of October, Pyongyang tested its short-range ballistic missiles with the claim that it simulated striking South Korea with tactical nuclear weapons. White House officials have largely remained silent about Washington's approach towards North Korea. The big and glitzy one-to-one summits between Kim Jong-un and the American president, as they happened during the tenure of Donald Trump, are not forthcoming. But China's belligerence in the Taiwan Strait and North Korea's ballistic missile launches have now goaded Tokyo to purchase hundreds of Tomahawk cruise missile systems from the United States. For the first time since the end of the Second World War, Tokyo will have the ability to strike targets in North Korea and also deep inside China. The only thing now required for the diplomatic calculations to go horribly wrong and spark a big conflagration on the Korean Peninsula is a misguided ballistic missile that has lost track of its direction.
There is trouble brewing in the Horn of Africa once again. The Somalian capital of Mogadishu was rocked by twin car bombings on the 29th of October. At least about 120 people are reported to have been killed and over 300 others are injured. The Sunni jihadist group Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for the attack. Our next report gets you more details.
2 explosive-laden cars blew up just minutes apart in the heart of the Somalian capital. The terror attack targeted the education ministry in Mogadishu. Followed by gunfire, the powerful explosions tore through walls and shattered windows of nearby buildings. Billowing smoke and dust could be seen rising high up in the air. ambulances rushed to the scene with their sirens blaring. Among the victims were young children, women, and elderly.
So far, the number of people who died has reached 100, and 300 are wounded. And the number for both the dead and wounded continues to increase.
The Saturday attack is a crucial reminder of the violence that Al-Shabaab had wreaked at the same spot 5 years ago. On October 14, 2017, a truck packed with explosives was blown up to inflict maximum casualties. A total of 512 people were killed and over 290 others were injured. The Somalian president described this week's attack as history repeating itself, given that it had happened at the same place and innocent people had again been massacred.
Who were these victims? Somali people who are recuperating from the Al-Shabaab attacks 5 years ago in the same area. Some of them recovered from injuries, some were disabled. Some were orphans who lost their loved relatives in previous attacks, and others.
The Islamist jihadists have been embroiled in a bloody turf war with the fragile federal government in Mogadishu for 15 years now. Al-Shabaab had even captured Mogadishu briefly before it was ousted by the combined forces of the African Union in 2011. Though considerably weakened, the Islamist group is still in control of vast swaths of countryside. Using threats of violence, Al-Shabaab extorts money from the local population to finance its deadly insurgency. The recent terror attack is a grim reminder of the threat the Al-Shabaab poses to peace and stability in the Horn of Africa.
The troubled nation of Ecuador is notorious for its deadly prison violence. And in the latest instance, at least about 5 police officers have been killed in a spate of bombings on the 1st of November. The very next day, 2 inmates were killed and 6 others are said to have been injured in prison clashes in the province of Guayas. The violent attacks have been attributed to organized crime groups that are waging a deadly gang war. A nightly curfew has now been imposed for the next 45 days, and a state of emergency has also been declared.
A transfer of hardened criminals from one of the most notorious prisons in Ecuador triggered a wave of bombings and violent attacks. Organized crime groups responded to the transfer of detainees from Guayas 1 prison by staging attacks on more than 18 targets. The cities of Guayaquil and Duran in the Guayas province and in Esmeraldas were the worst affected. The targets included police facilities and oil installations. The notorious Guayas 1 prison has been the scene of some of the bloodiest prison massacres. According to conservative estimates, at least 400 inmates have been killed since 2021. Following the wave of attacks, the Ecuadorian president declared a state of emergency.
I am declaring a state of emergency and a curfew at 9 p.m. in the provinces of Guayas and Esmeraldas. The forces of order will intensify their operations to guarantee the security of the citizens of Guayas and Esmeraldas.
The prison transfers were opposed by the relatives of the inmates, who staged a protest outside the literal penitentiary. The prison, though, insists that the transfers were needed to do maintenance work in cell blocks. New clashes erupted between inmates the next day at the Guayas Detention Center 2, leaving 2 inmates dead. Cracking the whip, police conducted raids in the notorious neighborhoods and in prison complexes, aided by sniffer dogs.
Yesterday and today's operations were carried out in prisons and on the streets. 53 criminals have been captured and will be brought to justice to pay for their crimes.
Ecuador has been experiencing a wave of violent crime recently, which authorities have attributed to rivalries between the drug gangs. These drug gangs have been engaged in a bloody turf war and are supposed to have links with the Mexican drug cartels. Ecuador's hugely overpopulated prisons have been turned into battlegrounds for supremacy among drug trafficking gangs. Beheadings and incinerations are employed to infuse fear and terror. Strategically located Ecuador has gone from being a drug transit route to a major distribution center of narcotics in its own right. A record 210 tons of drugs, mostly cocaine, was seized by law enforcement in the year 2021, whereas the tally for this year so far is 160 tons. With the escalating crime rate, the Ecuadorian president has a tough fight on his hands against the narco criminals.
Thanks for watching World at War. And if you want to reach out to me with any comments, suggestions or feedback, please feel free to tweet to me on the Twitter handle that you see on your screens. I'm your host Mohammed Saleh, and I'll see you again next week.